Is it going now? We are doing our first live stream of this week, so we're going to kind of let this go for a minute and see if we get any feedback. Are you able to see comments? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to kind of do sound check and make sure this is all working. I'm going to do some announcements, and then once we're sure that you guys online can hear, we'll get going. So we are coming from West Texas A&M University in Canyon, Texas. Hopefully some of you came last year. If it's your first year to come, we are glad you're here. We have a room full of band directors here that are here in person. They've come from all over the U.S. to be with us this week. What you're getting to watch at home is just a little snippet of what they get here. You get the prepared clinics. They also get to go and observe. They get to have lots of social interaction and lots of just talking shop with other directors that are here. So if you're ever able to come in person, I encourage you to do so. We've tried to give you at home everything you need, though, to make this as beneficial as possible. So they get a full workbook here. What I have online is a schedule. Yours is not as, it doesn't have all this on it because they have a lot more activities than the online. And then there's also a tracker. I don't have a copy of that, but it kind of looks like this, where you can track what you've attended and take notes. All of that can be found on banddirectorstalkshop.com. If you go to the very latest article, it has all the clinics for everything we're doing this week. They may not be up yet, but they will be up by the time of the clinic. Today's clinics are already posted. You can click on that and get the handouts. And then at the top, you can sign up to get the schedule and the notes section. And you can, there was something else there. I'm not sure. There's something else on there. So when you first go, look at the top, and it tells you how to get all the stuff that you need to make this successful, and it has all the handouts that we have here on campus. Do you see any feedback that they can hear us? Are there any comments? We also have a new person running our live stream. We've had the same person for 2 years, and so we have someone new, so we're kind of getting the system going here on that, so bear with us on that.
I would have to restart the stream to enable chat.
Can you see? No, don't do
I can
that.
see.
Are there any comments? If anyone...
There's no live chat, is what he's saying.
Okay. Oh, there's no live chat?
Yeah, I'll have to I can re-enable it, but I'll have to restart the stream.
We'll do that on the next clinic.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go and get going. So apologies on that. So there won't be a live chat. Hopefully he can hear me, so I'm assuming we're good to go. Once I leave the room, yeah, turn it up and see.
You're good.
Okay, all right. It sounds like we're good. So there's no way for you to communicate with us or ask questions, but this is actually meant to be kind of a more intimate group here for Dr. Garner. It's going to be a long clinic, lots of information. There may be questions from this group, but starting on the next clinic, we'll plan to have chat where you can ask questions, let us know if there's any kind of audio problem or anything like that. So I want to introduce to you Dr. Garner. If you have attended any of our live streams before, all the people in this room know him very well. He's a band director at WT forever. He's actually going to do a clinic with us Thursday where he's going to talk more about the history of his teaching experience. But today we're just going to dig right in and start talking about band. Lots of different ideas of things about band. So, Dr. Garner.
Great to have all of you here. This is being live streamed, so no profanity. I'll do the best I can. And first of all, apologies to everyone. I had a keynote presentation for this that I'd worked really hard on, but being the world's most technologically challenged person, I failed to take into account that I needed to have the password for my laptop where I have the keynote presentation. I didn't even know I had a password for it. And so, keynote is out. Sorry for that. But we'll do what we can. Okay, first thing on here is what I have repeated so many times and believe in so devoutly, that our jobs as teachers is information, communication, motivation, and evaluation. Information meaning we need to know our stuff. I've always said I would be a positively lousy calculus teacher because I don't know the first thing about it, nor do I have any interest in knowing, but we need to know what we're talking about. We need to have the information. We need to be able to communicate that information to our audience, in our cases, the band, in such a way that they can comprehend and act on the information they're receiving. We need to have a way to motivate them, and this is a biggie, to motivate them to receive and process that information. And finally, we have to have some means of evaluation. In our case, that's the easy part. The hardest part, in my experience, I think not only in my experience, is the communication part. People, doesn't apply to just young people, it applies to old people and young people and everybody in between, is getting their attention and communicating the information to them. For some time, I tell you when I realized how difficult this attention part is for the first time. We were taking the West Texas Band to TMEA for our first time there in, if you could believe it, 1968. And the motivation among the students and among me and my associate, my great friend Don Baird, the motivation could possibly have been higher. Play before all the band directors in the state of Texas. We didn't know whether we'd get laughed at, thrown rocks, rotten tomatoes, or what. Most people didn't even know there was a Canyon, Texas, or that there was a college there, or did they have a band? Which ultimately, I think, worked to our advantage, the element of surprise. So, Don Baird was conducting a number on the program, and I was sitting back in the clarinet section, and he stopped to make a point, and he went on for a while. When it suddenly occurred to me, to my great surprise and horror, I dialed him out. I wasn't paying any attention, as highly motivated as I was. And I thought, oh my God. And then I looked around, is this happening to anybody else? The rest of the band looked like they're in some sort of a comatose state. This communication thing is really hard. Getting attention is really hard. So anyway, that's our fourfold job as I see it. What I call my credo, some of you have heard this many, many times, and I apologize for inflicting it upon you again. But this occurred way back when. I was sitting at home one night studying scores in preparation for the next day's rehearsal, when the thought crossed my mind, now exactly what is it we're trying to do here that's going to ensure a perfect performance, knowing that a perfect performance will never happen, never has, never will. But we keep scratching and clawing, trying to get as close as we can. Well, what is it we're trying to do? And can it all be summed up in one sentence? So after a while, what I came up with is this. You've got to get the right note. We can all agree good performances do contain the right note in the right place. Talking rhythm here. Every note starts at the right time, ends at the right time. The right note, right place, in the right style. That's a very broad category. That includes phrase shaping and all the rest, the style that is appropriate to the music. Not a small thing. Right note, right place, right style, at the right volume. Now that is not only reflective of what the composer appears to be asking for, forte, piano, crescendo, whatever, but is it at the right volume of every individual that reflects their relative importance in the musical fabric at any time. Sometimes, well, wait a minute, I maybe can demonstrate this better. I think I did bring a flute with me. So, as I said, is the volume properly reflective of our importance, the individual's importance in the musical fabric at any time? So how important is this? Is that more important, or is it, or maybe, sorry. Well, now this is certainly subject to individual personal preference, to be sure. There are no absolutes here. We can say the melody is always most important. We have to also recognize there's often more than one melody at a time. So as we're studying scores and preparing for our next day's rehearsal, we have to consider, okay, what are the various elements of the musical texture at any point, and what is their relative level of importance? Right note in the right place, right style, the right volume. That also includes, is if you and I are playing third clarinet together, are we playing exactly the same volume? That's a big part of it too. We don't want anybody standing out, but we want everybody carrying their fair share of the load. Right note, right place, right style, right volume, perfectly in tune. We'll talk more about that later. With a beautiful sound. Now, you probably know me well enough, I couldn't stop at that. I made up a little tune. You gotta get the right note in the right place, at the right volume, in the right style, perfectly in tune, with a beautiful sound. Thank you. And actually, I wrote a little arrangement of that that's on my keynote presentation. So sorry, I don't have that to play for you. So what I usually do, I don't go in quite the detail with the kids that I did with you, but I will give them a quick little synopsized version of that. And then I'll say it. I wrote up a little song to go with, or you wouldn't want to hear that, would you? And of course somebody said, yeah, I sing it. You want to hear it? So of course I do. Why would I make such a fool of myself? To get their attention. And another thing I've started doing, I've done this for some time, is often say, look, I'm going to give you a little pearl of wisdom here. And then I'm going to ask somebody to repeat what I just said. This is an effort to get them to pay attention and process. Okay, the way you play legato, two things. You've got to keep a steady airflow and use a da syllable at the top. What did I just say? More air? You get that sometimes. But what I've also found is, after you do that 2 or 3 times, they do start to pay better attention, knowing they may be called upon to repeat what you just said. So maybe you have an opportunity to break through that attention barrier. And please interrupt me at any point if you like to disagree or refute or need more clarification. Don't hesitate to interrupt. Okay, we're down to rhythm now. There are 2 aspects of rhythm, and much I'm saying you all know as perfectly well as I do. There is both the intellectual and the physical aspect of rhythm. We need to know, a half note gets 2 beats, that's good. A quarter note gets a beat, blah, 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 blah. But that's of no value at all. It's like, I always analogize that to a carpenter. Goes out to build a house or whatever. He has a set of plans, a set of tools. He doesn't have a tape measure though. Okay, let's see. This board needs to be 7 feet 3 3/4 inches. I think I'll saw about right here. Can you imagine what the house is going to look like with it all over it? So it's nice to know that a half note gets 2 beats, but that's the intellectual aspect. The physical aspect is we need to physically feel the pulse. That's our musical rhythmic measuring stick, so to speak. And what is the best way to enhance that pulse? Well, I've always said if you could do jumping jacks, the bigger the volume movement, or if we could do this, that would be great. I've had to see the dentist a couple of times trying to do jumping jacks while I was playing my flute, so I finally gave up on that. The foot tap, of course, but it's not just the foot tap. Da, da. Okay, let's talk foot tap for a minute. I have identified various kinds of foot tappers. There's what I call the hot iron foot tapper. That would be the one that taps as if they're touching a hot iron. Da, 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 da. By the way, you have some of those kids. Dee, dee. And I see Kelly nodding her head. Yeah, I do. You all do, of course. And there's the magnet tapper. They're not as common, but they do exist in fair number, where they got a magnet in a shoe and the floor is made of metal. Da, 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 right? And then there is the melody tapper. Da, 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 da. There's the freeform tapper. Da, 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 da. You know it, don't you? And finally, there's the enlightened tap. The foot tap reflects. It's not just the pulse we need to know. We need to know the division of the pulse. So if we're in simple meter, meaning each beat is divided by 2, down, up, but more than that, I want them to feel something on the second half of the beat. Not just the foot coming up, I want them to feel being the critical word. Da, 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 da. I knew exactly where that 8th note was. My foot told me so because my heel hit the ground. Da, 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 right? Then it's a little more. Years ago, how many of you know the name J.R. McIntyre? There'll be a few here. Okay, J.R. was one of my great lifetime friends and one of the history's great band directors. He called me one day, this has been a number of years ago, and he said, May and Duncan, it was a big music company at the time, it no longer exists. They had a store in Amarillo, and their headquarters was in Midland. Well, they had various stores, but he said, May and Duncan had this guy named James Middleton from the University of Missouri do a clinic here in Odessa yesterday on teaching beginning band. And then he spoke words I never thought would come out of his mouth, but he was not quick to offer praise. He said, this guy, and this is a literal repetition of what he said, this guy has got to be the world's greatest teacher of beginners. J.R. McIntyre said that? And he said, he's going to be doing a clinic in Amarillo next Saturday, and you've got to be there. I would have been there anyway. But after he said that, no way, I'm not going to be there. And J.R. was right. I think the guy was the world's greatest teacher of beginners. And so he was talking about what I've been talking about, rhythm and the subdivided foot tap. He said, now, in simple meter, it's got to be down, up, for all the reasons we just talked about. And I thought, yeah, I figured that out way back when I was a junior high band director, big deal. I know that. And then he said, now a compound meter, it's got to reflect the division of the beat, down, press, up, down, press. I thought, of course, why didn't I ever think of that? I never did. But yeah, da 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 dee, dee da da dum, dee dee dum, down, press, up, press, up. Now we have one of the leading authorities in this room on that. Her name is Kelly Montgomery. I may tell this story in a bit. Problem with down, press, up, well, both of them. You know, innate rhythmic ability is like all other human qualities. Some of us are born to be tall, some short, some blue eyes, some brown eyes, some brilliantly smart, others maybe not so much. Some of us are rhythmically gifted from birth, some of us not at all, and a wide swath in between. But here's what I've found with band directors. I've given this speech a few times. I think it's a pretty easy sell. What I just said, I think is not because I said it brilliantly, because the ideas are good and they're not all mine. I'm not saying that by any means. But I think I've sold a lot of people on that. Yeah, it makes sense. And so here's what happens then. Okay, gang, here's what we're going to do now. This is in compound rhythm. And so we're going to do down, press up. Okay, my job is finished here. Nobody. You just stuck your toe in the water. You've got to stay with it and stay with it and stay with it and stay with it some more. There'll be a very few kids that can do it right away. There'll be others that, well, with a fair amount of effort, yeah, they finally get it. And there'll be others that are supremely challenged rhythmically, but I have never, ever found a student that with enough, I guess it's time to tell the J. Martin story, that enough persistence hasn't been able to do it. To use Marcy Zafuto's, J.R.'s daughter, the late Marcy Zafuto, her favorite phrase was persistently insistence, and boy, she gave meaning to the word. You're going to learn to do that, and I'm not going to let it go until you do. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm worn out the knees on a number of pairs of pants, down on the floor, tapping kids' foot up and down. And Kelly's nodding her head, yeah, you've seen it. Well, I know you've seen it. You just have to stay with it till they can do it. Okay, anybody know Jay Martin? Jay Martin was a trumpet player here, great guy. And after he graduated, he came to me and said, "Could I come back next year and work on a master's in conducting?" Sure. So he did. But Jay was, I must say, a bit rhythmically challenged. He was smart and he was determined. And so this is the last lesson, conducting lesson we had before the Christmas break. And we were doing something in compound meter, and he was having some clear difficulty with it. I said, "Jay, do that again. Conduct it and do down, press up, and count it using the Eastman counting system," which we'll talk about more in a moment here. And Jay looked down very sheepishly. He said, "I can't do that." I said, "You can't what?" He said, "I can't do down, press up." Sounded like he was confessing to a mass murder or something. And I said, "Okay, Jay, here's your assignment for your next lesson. I want you to come back, conduct this, doing down, press up, and count it using the Eastman counting system." He said, "Okay." And I swear to you, as he was walking out the door, I thought, it's not going to happen. He's going to try really hard, and it's going to be hard for him. And he ultimately is going to say, "You know, I can get by with this, without this, I don't have to do it." Well, Christmas came and went. Second semester started. Jay came to his first lesson. "Okay, Jay." He goes, 1 to lead, 2 la to lead, 3 lead, la lead. I was floored. It was perfect. He did it so perfectly and with such conviction and authority. And I think I can recapture this conversation pretty much word for word. I said, "Jay, that's fantastic. You must have really worked hard on this." And Jay said, "That's all I did over the holidays." I don't think he even took time to open his Christmas presents. And this was one of the most magical moments of my teaching career, this next little part. He said, "It has changed my life." I said, "Jay, it has changed your life?" He said, "Yes, sir. I have never been able to do compound meter and tap my foot before. And now I can count anything." And as he said those words, tears were streaming down his cheeks. And guess what? My cheeks too. It was a glorious moment. And it's a perfect example of what Marcy called persistently insistent. By George, he just stayed with it until he got it. Tell you what, every kid in the WT band can do that too. Because not only fever won't let him get by without it. He sees to it that they can do it. I even have a video of it. I was out there one day. Okay, this is not on the sheet, but no, I'm going to leave that for later. Let's talk about the Eastman counting system. Now, you can walk into almost any bar and start an immediate fight between Eastman and traditional. I've done it any number of times. When I went to college, I went to Texas Tech to be a geology major. It's a long story you don't need to hear. I failed 10 hours first semester, by the way. They had this ridiculous requirement about attending class. I thought it was entirely. Yeah, I did. I failed chemistry, algebra, and German. The teacher held some kind of a grudge because I was never there. Anyway, so I became a music major by default. I did not want to do that because that could only lead to being a band director. And as I always say, that was on my list of career choices right after garbage collection. I was absolutely adamant about that. I was not going to be a band director. Colleges at that time, with the exception of the Vander School in Chicago, for the most part, didn't train people to be band directors. I never had a private lesson. I never had a brass class. I never had a woodwind class. I never had a percussion class. I never had an instrumental methods class. I did have a conducting class. It met one time and everybody made a beat. So that was my preparation to be a band director. But what I did have, and I treasure and will always treasure, is Mary Jean Van Appledorn was the new theory teacher, came my sophomore year. Incidentally, she taught there for 57 years. She had a freshly minted master's degree from the Eastman School. And so one of the first things she did, and the inventor of the Eastman system was Professor Allen, accounting system, Professor Allen I. McHose. I have the book in which it was first presented. And so she was a student of Dr. McHose's. One of the first things she did was start inflicting this Eastman accounting system on us. I thought, okay, one day, I thought, I don't need to know this. I'm an expert counter. I was a decent counter, but not nearly as good as I thought I was. But okay, I'll do that. But then the first time I heard her say "Wantalata," it was all I could do to get up, keep from getting up and bursting out the door. And for once, I didn't even know I had any good judgment, but for once it prevailed. This little voice in the back of my head said, "You sure you want to do that? You want to repeat the class?" And I said, "No." So I stayed, okay, Wantalata. I learned it. And class ended, I put it out of my mind. I don't think we learned 1 and 2, and I think we just kind of learned that from by osmosis, really. So later on, quite unexpectedly, and thank heavens, I found myself being a band director. And I figured out right away, this 1 and 2 and thing is not very good. There's a lot of rhythms you can't count with it. And so for the first time, with an open mind, I revisited the Eastman County system. Certainly didn't have an open mind before, and I thought, wait a minute. You can count anything with this. And you know what else? It's not complicated. Now, I don't know this for a fact. This is purely hypothesis on my part, but I would bet on it that Professor McHose probably thought, this 1 and 2 and thing is highly deficient. We need a counting system where you can count anything. And so I'm going to invent it. As I said, I imagine that. I would bet on it, though. And he succeeded at the highest possible level. There is no rhythm you cannot count with it. And you only have to know 5 things. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir, so to speak, here. Fess up, how many of you use Eastman already? Okay, now, how many of you do not? Okay, now, you're not leaving this room until you're a true believer.
That's hard.
So, one of my good friends, I won't say who it was, but former colleague, a very good friend here at WT and a great teacher, a member of the instrumental faculty. He was a dyed-in-wool, went-in. And he and I would have many pretty heated, good-natured, but heated debates about this. And I remember one day saying to him, okay, I'll call him Bill, his name is not Bill. Okay, Bill, how are you going to count 30-second notes? His face kind of screwed up, his eyes are going from side to side. He was not a person to ever admit defeat. And then he gave it a moment's thought. He said, Okay, what are the, by the way, you sometimes, well, I'll get to that in a minute. Here are the 5 things. If it comes on the beat, you call it by the number of the beat, just as you do in the so-called traditional system. Okay, no big sweat. If it comes on the upbeat, instead of and, we use te, spelled T-E. Now, other than triplets, anything else is ta. So you recognize this, of course. This is a quarter note, right? Now what do we have? I'm going to pretend, when I was do band clinics in the old days, I would just try to accommodate whatever accounting system they used. But it's so often inadequate. I finally changed it and I thought, okay, I'm going to teach them how to use a good one. So, okay, you're a bunch of 7th and 8th graders, let's say. Okay, this is a quarter note. What do we have now? Okay, what do we call this one? This is on the beat. We call it 1, right? And this is? 10. Let's count some 8th notes. You ready? Go. 1, take, 2, take, 3. Oh, man, you are good. Okay. Now, let's take that first 8th note here. Come on, fingers. And split that in half. Now what do we have here? 2 16th notes. This is still what? This is still te. What do we call that now? Good. Ready? Count.
1 tate, 2 tate, 3 tate, 4 tate.
Wow. Okay, ready? Count.
1 teta, 2 teta, 3 teta, 4 teta.
Okay, smart Alex. Here's your final exam. Ready? Count.
1 ta, 2 ta, 3 ta, 4 ta.
Right. Okay. Now you know everything you need. What if you have a group of, okay, BJ's an expert counter. I'm going to pick him out and put him to the test. BJ, we've got a group of 5 on the first beat going to a quarter note. How are you going to count those second, third, fourth, fifth notes of the group of 5?
They're all tops.
Wow. Tamara, you trained him well. Okay. Because none of them come on one of the basic divisions of the beat. 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to triplets. Now we have a triplet, and this is the dotted quarter note, of course. 1 second division of the beat is called la. Last division of the beat is called li. And anything else is called ta. So let's count some triplets.
2 la li, 3 la li, 4. 1 li, 2 li, 3 li, 4. 1 la, 2 la, 3 la, 4 la.
Yeah. Anything else is ta. Now, if you have I wonder if there's anything I can write on with this chalkboard. Son of a gun, there is not. Now, if you've got a group of 6 notes in one beat, there's 2 possibilities, depending on what the basic underlying division of the beat is. If we're a compound meter, it'd be 1 to 3 to 4 to. If we're in I said compound, if we're in simple meter rather, 1 to 2. If it's a compound meter, 1 to la to li to 2 to la to li to, those are the same values. But depending on whether it's simple or compound, it could be 2 different things. Now, friends, there is nothing more to know about that. I mentioned this other thing. I told you about James Middleton. James, at one time, before he went to the University of Missouri, he and his colleague, Bill Robinson, were band directors at Norman, Oklahoma High School. These had to be 2 of the most imaginative, creative band directors in the history of band. They came up with the breath impulse system, and they were not dyed-in-the-wool Eastman counters. As I said, they were really smart guys. But one day, one of them said to the other, there's a little ambiguity here. 1 ta, te ta. These are both tas. We need to eliminate that ambiguity. Let's call this one T. 1 T, te ta, 2 T, te ta. Now, from intellectually, that seems to make sense. But that was not part of Macose's original conception, let me assure you. I have the proof of it. As I said, I have the original book in which he first presented it. It seems, from an intellectual point of view, to make sense. But after many decades of doing this, it doesn't really help. What it does is add one little more complication to a very uncomplicated system. So forget the T. It's not 1 T theta, it's 1 ta theta. Now, I wonder if there's any one of you that would be willing to give a quick, does not use this system, that uses 1 and 2, and they would be willing to give us a quick little synopsis of everything I said. What are the 5 things? Does anybody tell us? Hey, good. Come on up here and tell the camera.
No.
Okay, and introduce yourself if you would.
Oh, yes. I'm Kevin Ryan. I believe the 5 rules are: if it's on the beat, it's a number. If it's on the and, it's te.
If it's on the and, it's a te. Okay. I'll go with that. All right.
If it's on the upbeat, it's a te.
Yeah, that's all right.
Anything else is a ta. The second triplet is law, and the third triplet is Lee. Did I miss anything?
Hey, I think he was paying attention. Okay, the next thing I want you to do, has anybody got a Bible? I need you to get this. I swear that he's going to do this from now on, that he has seen the light.
I've seen the light.
Okay. Praise God. No, I don't know why this debate goes on, because it just seems such an easy choice to me. But some people are so, well, we're all that way. There's probably nothing, and we're not going to talk politics here, but believe me. But whatever side you're on, there's probably nothing that's going to persuade you to go the other way. And so it is with the county systems, except in one case that we know of. We've had a conversion here, and praise the Lord. We did, with the symphonic band, years ago, we did a clinic at TMEA on rehearsal techniques. And one of the things had to do with rhythm. And I'd written out a little version of the song America, da 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 da, except in a highly distorted rhythm. And we'd worked on tapping our foot and counting it and playing it. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, when we do this clinic for the band directors at TMEA, we'll have a little contest here and have one of the sections, whoever does it best, we're going to pick that section to demonstrate, come forward and demonstrate. And we're going to have that tomorrow or next Thursday or whatever. And I remember the day of the contest, walking by in the old Fine Arts Building, now known as the parking lot, walking by the former lounge one day, and the section leader, then Kelly Mowry, she looked like a Marine drill sergeant. She had her trombone players there playing D, 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 da da da, whatever it was, and tapping her foot. It was a compound rhythm. And she's walking up and down, looking at those feet. I said, it looked like a Marine drill sergeant. And they were all there except one guy. So later on that day, we had the contest. The trombones got up there. They nailed it, except for that one guy. Well, the clarinets all nailed it. So the clarinets are the ones that got to do it. Kelly's still bummed about that. She's gone. So Eric Rath and I were in a car going from here to, McKinney or someplace where you been. And I was telling her about that. He said, who was the guy? I said, I'm not sure. He said, well, I'll call Kelly. And school was going on right now. I said, but she'll be teaching. He said, but she'll answer the phone. He called Kelly. She answered the phone. And he asked her, and Kelly immediately said the name of the guy. Immediately. Guess what? A little later on, I was doing it. Did I tell you?
Yeah.
I hadn't seen him in years. I was doing another all-region band elsewhere. I don't want to be too specific. And he showed up. I told him that story, and he doubled over in laughter. I was hoping it would be in shame and embarrassment. Okay. 5 ways of drilling technique. Man, taking a long time on these. When Tamara first asked me about doing this 2.5-hour clinic, 2.5, she said, yeah, I want you to tell them everything you know. I said, well, I could do that several times over in 2.5 hours. But at the rate I'm going, maybe not. Okay, we talked about the 4-fold challenge and the credo. We talked about rhythm. 5 ways of drilling technique. So you're doing, I always think of this one, Tchaikovsky, Finale of the Fourth. And we got to work out those 16 parts. Well, sure. Oh, come on, baby. It's your fault, not mine. Maybe with the metronome. And as we're able, speed it up. Now maybe you played it 10 times, missed it 9, you finally got it 1. And so you move on, right? No. You're batting 10%. So that's the time-honored way, as I said. The drill routine. Does anybody know the name Joseph E. Maddy? He's the guy that started what was known as the National Music Camp, Interlochen. And the drill routine goes like this. Maybe we're just going to go work on the first few notes. That much, okay? So we all do it, all of us. Pa-ba-doo-ba-dee-da-da-da-da, all of us. Pa-ba-doo-ba-dee-ba-da-ba-da. That's the drill routine. It's almost magical. Now, you don't do this to full band. These are great for section rehearsals. Does everybody understand the drill routine? It's a great way to practice, to work these things out. Another is playing in rhythms. This is a very common thing, but I first learned it from a member of the Harrington String Quartet here. In the case of, this works with notes of equal duration. In this case, it's a bunch of 16ths. So we're going to hold the first note of each group of 4, an extra beat. Do that a few times. So what's happening is as we're holding that note, our brain is processing what are the next 4 notes to come. Then when we're comfortable with that, we move to the second note. Finally, the third note. And then at last, that's one way of practicing rhythm. Also, dotted rhythms. So what you're doing is playing 3/4 of it up to tempo, different 3/4 of it every time. Are you with me? Okay. Then dotted rhythms. We're playing half of it up to tempo. Make sense? They're almost magical ways to practice. And if you can do it with them, when I was a young band director, it was common in those days for people who became band directors, they'd get that degree in their pocket, they'd put the instrument in a case, put it in the closet, never saw the light of day again. It's your best teaching tool, friends. Keep your chops up and use it. And there's another subliminal message here. Do you really want to say, oh, listen, boys and girls, playing an instrument is such a wonderful thing. It's just like, of course, I don't do it anymore. No, the subliminal message needs to be, hey, this is so great, I love it, I do it every day. I had a few stories I was going to accompany that with, but they're immaterial. Okie dokie. Dad, God, I wish I had this access to this keynote thing, because it's so important. I started my teaching career at Hutchinson Junior High School in a place called Lubbock, Texas. Spent 4 years there. And I had done my student teaching there. And, oh man, I look back on those days with just such immense fondness. I can name a jillion of kids that were in that band, and a few of them I still have occasional contact with. They're all senior citizens to the max now. And a lot of them are no longer with us. And that's the hardest part. But I realized a while back, I spend a good part of my time in a fantasy world. And in my fantasy world, it's still the mid-50s, and I'm the band director at Hutchinson Junior High. And in that capacity, I have done tons and tons of stuff. I put together well over 600 duets of varying levels of difficulty. A few of them originally, but most of them from real composers. Some of them Tamari has on her website. And trios and quartets and what I call duettino alternatos, and all sorts of little pieces. But one thing I did, seems to me that the wellspring of all technical development is the chromatic scale. Now, I could any of you remember Dana Carvey's Grumpy Old Man on Saturday Night Live? I'm that guy in the band world. Back in my day, we didn't have assistant directors. We didn't have team teaching. We didn't have homogeneous classes. I had 120 beginners every year, including 4 alto clarinets, middle alto clarinets, and we loved it. Well, that's where it was. I think it's time to tell you, first of all, the center of the music education universe in those days was Teachers College at Columbia University. They had some very distinguished people there. Norval Church, the great conductor, who I try to model everything after I'm able. Lilibel Pitts, very, very famous in elementary music. James Mersel. And my good friend and mentor, Ted Krager. Now, Ted Krager was an incredible musician, trumpet player, legit and jazz, and also an amazing teacher. I followed him. I've had 4 jobs, band jobs in my life. I followed Ted in 3 of them, including one at this very institution. And so anyway, he got his doctorate in music ed at Columbia, and he would come back after a summer up there, and I'd spend the next 9 months picking his brain about everything he learned at Columbia. I was fascinated with it, mostly about church, but I also particularly remembered a story. I wish I had a stool to sit on. There's no stool. You got one? Well, it's a high enough. No, I'm going to be way down too low. But that's very cool.
Yeah.
Or does that, you could do that on a chair, maybe? No, I don't think so.
John's going to find you something.
Yeah, I had a dumb backyard accident and broke my back a few years ago, and long standing sometimes becomes a little problematic. Back to James Mersel. So one thing Mersel said, now this all related to, Mersel was talking about starting a kid on an instrument. Do you really want to spend, and some guys do this. I say guys, and I'm using it in a generic way. In fact, when I started teaching, I knew of one woman band director in the whole state of Texas. And now they've taken over, man. You probably already know that. Oh, okay. Look at you. What a guy. Thank you, John. Mersel was talking about, well, I started saying, I know guys that spend 6 weeks buzzing that trumpet mouthpiece before they make a sound. Don't want to fit any bad habits. And so Mersel was talking about that very kind of thing. Maybe it's just clarinets on the mouthpiece and barrel, or flutes on the head joint, or whatever. Mersel said, analogize it to teaching a kid how to throw a ball. What are you going to do? Are you going to spend days, maybe weeks, explaining the aerodynamics, the exact arm motion, the way to hold the ball? No, you're going to say, hey kid, throw me the ball. Great, now do this. And you start refining it. Now, that made a huge impression on me. So I decided, by George, that's not swearing, is it? Okay. I'm just going to send, this sounds impossible. I'm going to, 120 beginners, as I told you. I'm going to send every kid out that door. Well, okay, wait a minute, let me back up a minute. My own experience. When I got my first flute, I'm so excited. And when I went to bed that night, before taking to school the next day, my mother came in to tell me good night. I was crying. She said, what's wrong? And I said, it's that flute, Mama. I'll never learn where to put my fingers. It just looks so complicated. I was extremely apprehensive. And that's not unusual. It's not unusual for parents to be apprehensive too. I used to hear this. I don't know if my kid has any talent or not. All I could ever do is play the radio. So there's a little apprehension, or maybe a lot of apprehension on their part if they've made a significant investment in this one. And on the kid's part, I don't know if can do this. Well, what you want to do is allay that apprehension on both parts. So I thought, James Marshall's words ringing in my ears. I'm going to send every kid out the door, a whole of 120 beginners, the first day able to play a tune. That sounds impossible, except it's not. So they all could go. I said I was there 4 years. I must have had 480 beginners and all. I don't think there was an exception that they could all leave the room going, sounded horrible. Of course, that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point. And I know somebody might think, oh, you don't want them to develop. Listen, it takes a while to develop a habit. Is that Dick Clardy? Whoa, my God. And Mary Clardy.
Sorry to bother you. Just one minute.
Okay, the class is over. Their daughter, Mackenzie, is an incredibly gifted young horn player. She was a camp soloist last year. This girl is amazing, and as is Kelly and Greg Montgomery's son, who's just finished his freshman year here at WT, trombone player. Band directors have the best kids and the most talented. I don't believe that. They do. You do. So anyway, we did have one big advantage. Nobody had like instrument classes. That was unheard of. But beginning band was fourth period. So fourth period was a split lunch period. It was that fourth period was an hour and a half long, 4A, 4B, 4C. And some kids would eat at 4A, others would have lunch at 4B, others at 4C. So I had brass at 4A, woodwinds 4B, and the whole band at 4C. That was a huge plus for us. So all the woodwinds, the clarinets are going E, D, C, D, E, 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 and so are the bassoons, E, D, C, saxophones, B, A, G, A, B, 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 flutes, B, A, G, A, B, B, B. I think I had the trumpet starting on G, G, F, E flat, it's a little more hard, F, G, 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 F, F, three notes. And so what I would do, I start, okay, here's the way you open your case, here's the way you put your instrument together, here's the way you hold your mouth, and here's where you put your hands. Okay, now let's do these three fingers. They can all do that. And in my mind's eye, I could imagine kids coming home and plays that awful sounding version of, what is that, Mary Had a Little Lamb? And I hear Sadie say, Mama, Johnny can already play a song. So now we get down to serious business the next day. Okay, we start refining things and going from there. I cannot tell you how strongly I believe in that. Don't spend forever teaching them how to form an armature and make a sound. You're boring them silly. And it's not necessary. It takes a while to form a bad habit. It takes a while to form as well as a good habit, any kind of habit. So you're not running any risk there. But I think there's a great deal to be gained. Okay, 5 ways of doing technique. Did we talk about all of those? Chromatic scale, yeah. Oh, that's the other thing. Yeah, I'm back in my grumpy old man mode. I swear to you, at the end of that year, if there was an exception, I don't remember, but it's been a long time ago, there may have been. I just don't remember that there were. Every kid, beginner student, could play the chromatic scale full range. The flutes, 3 octaves. Saxophones, low B flat up to high F. Clarinets, low E up to high G. The bassoons, low B flat up to high G. The oboes, low E flat up to high E flat. The trumpets, low F sharp up to G above the staff, or for the case, in some cases where chops permitted, they could go higher than that. And the equivalent range for all the other brass instruments. They could all do that. It was like Marcy's persistently insistent. You're going to do this, and we're going to see to it. And more than that, you know, if somebody else told me this, I wouldn't believe it. We had no private study. They could do all 12 scales, all 12 major scales. You just have to be able to teach them and show them and expect it. kids can do that. If you demand it, and I'm not, when I say demand, I'm not talking about being a tough guy or girl or whatever. I think kindness is extremely important. This is a story that belongs in tomorrow's class, but I'm going to tell it now. Some of you have heard this till you're sick of it. To those of you, I apologize for foisting it on you again. But here is the most relevant, significant, important moment of my entire teaching career. It happened, I think, in my second year. I had a kid in a beginning band. His name was Gerald, I won't say the last name, who was pretty challenged. He was a cornet player. We didn't use trumpets in those days, cornet. And in spite of everything I tried, whatever valve or combination of valves Gerald had down, it was the same sound that came out. It didn't sound much like a cornet, but it's just, and he would stop every now and then off his mouth, wipe his mouth. And I thought, oh man, I've got to get rid of this kid. He's going to make me look bad. So I developed a plan. I thought about it a lot. Beginning band was fourth period. Miss Gautier had an art class fourth period. And I thought I could get my friend, Mr. Howard, the principal, and he was my friend. I bet I can get him transferred into Miss Gautier's art class. By golly, that's what I'm going to do. Before I had a chance to act on that, we had a PTA open house. They still do those. Parents would come and visit all our children's classes. The teachers would tell them all the wonderful things they're doing for their sons and daughters. And we had an open house. And I'm thinking about Gerald. Oh, man. I knew it was a single-parent family, and I knew his mother was a nurse. So the night came. I had the beginning band parents in the room. This lady with the nurse's uniform. I'd given this a lot of thought. What am I going to ask? Because they all come by, shake your hand, and say, how's Susie doing? How's Johnny doing? What am I going to say to her? I gave it a lot of thought and came up with a pre-prepared answer. So she's back there in the line. My heart rate is steadily increasing. She finally gets up to the front of the line. These are words that are burned indelibly in my memory, and I don't care how far I sink into Alzheimer's, I remember this. I can quote this conversation verbatim. She extends her hand. Hello, Mr. Garner. I'm Mrs. So-and-so, Gerald's mother. And here it comes. How's Gerald doing in band? So I regurgitated my pre-prepared answer, which was, well, Mrs. So-and-so, I think Gerald's talents lie in some area other than music. And she said words that positively shook my world. She smiled it's hard for me to tell this. She smiled very sweetly and said, I thought that's what you would say, but you need to know something. For the first 6 years of Gerald's life, school life, I've had to push him out the door crying every morning. This year, he can hardly wait to get out, and it's all because of band. I thought, oh, that's why I'm here. It's not about me. It's not about winning. It's not about me looking good. It's about Gerald. It's about all these other kids. Winning is fine, but that's not why we're the purpose. We're there. We're there to help shape young lives for the better. Now the Gerald story goes on. I'll just tell you the last chapter of it. One day, many years later, here at WT, we were having a concert with the second band, rehearsal. I was sitting back with the clarinet section. I think we had a student conductor on the podium. And I saw a guy looking through the double doors leading into the hall. So I got up, went out to see if I could help him. There's a guy with a bus driver's uniform on. He said, Mr. Garner? I said, yes. And I looked at this name tag, silver name tag, metal name tag on his uniform. It was a very familiar last name. I said, Gerald? Yeah. Gerald, let's go to my office and talk. Gerald had a good job. He had a wife. He had 2 kids. He had a house. Gerald was living the American dream. What if I'd had him transferred to the Episcopal Theater art class? Never would have happened. Never would have happened. There are teachers and heaven knows administrators that don't really understand why they're there. It's the kids. It's only the kids. It's not here for you to have employment and get a paycheck or to look important. Mr. College President on down. So many of those guys don't understand. And most of the guys don't seem to understand that. It's for the kids. It's only for the kids. So yeah, that was the most important moment of my teaching career. I think about it all the time. I still do. That's not what I intended to talk about here. What brought that up anyway? Don't think it had anything to do with it. Well, I'm sure all of you are disposed in that direction already. But what a gift we have. It's nice to be able to put food on the table and make the house payment. We've got to be able to do that. But it's for the kids. Okay. Well, I feel better. Thank you for that. As I said last night, I thought this was mostly going to be a therapy session for me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you learn to read. Okay, back to the grumpy old man. When we went to sight reading, we didn't do what you do. We sight read, and we loved it. By the way, you don't sight read anymore. Forget that. That is not sight reading. Come on. Somebody mentioned the name Charles Traylor earlier. Charles Traylor is another old guy who was band director for many years at Abilene Christian. Great guy, great teacher. And his granddaughter, Kesley Ferris, lived here in Canada. I think she's recently completed her study at the University of Indiana. An oboe player like you never heard. Oh, what a talent. But anyway, she gave a senior recital in high school, and they were kind enough to invite me. And they had a reception afterward at her parents' house, Charles' daughter, and her family. And so Charlie and I were talking. At the reception, I said, hey, Charlie, you still do a lot of judging. Do you have the impression that I do that they have really dumbed down the sight reading? You might want to put your hands over your ears because it's going to be a lot of decibels. He said, do I ever? Except about twice that loud. This is not sight reading. Come on. It's ridiculous. And it's true. When I was a young band director, we didn't sight read one piece. We sight read 2, a march and an overture. I don't know for sure how much time we had, but I think it was about 2 minutes. And what we could do is say, okay, gang, tempo's going to be about this. Look over, notice what the key signature is. We're in the key of concert B flat here, but we add a flat over here at letter C, right? And down here going at letter D would be a little retard, and there's a time change, so be ready for that. That was the extent of the preparation. And then we did. We sight read. How I hate the way it's going now. Unfortunately, it's beyond my control, of course. But, okay, try but true. We learn to read by reading. And in my fantasy world, oh man, I wish I had these on my keynotes to show you. I did one thing called sight readings, snippets by the masters. And there are 100 of them. They're each 3 lines long. From Beethoven, Mozart, Brahms, Rossini, Mussorgsky, you name it. A whole bunch of them. little sight reading things of varying levels of difficulty. The idea being, here's stuff we can practice, sight reading, and also introduce them to the great master of the world. Now, okay, I need to tell you another really important experience for me. I was driving one night from Canyon to Clovis, my second home, and I was going to work with the freshman band over there. They were doing Alfred Reed Armenian dances, set one. You know, it's a pretty big challenge for ninth graders. And so at the clinic, well, excuse me, as I was driving, I was listening to NPR, and they were replaying an interview they had done with Professor Russell Akoff from the Wharton School. And he had recently died, and they were, in his memory, replaying the interview. And as I tuned in, he very quickly caught my attention. He said, "What is the worst way to learn?" The worst way to learn, he said, is to put somebody up in front of a bunch of people and have him talk to them. Very much is what we're doing right now. The classical lecture method. And I thought, yeah, that probably is the worst way to learn. Then he said, what is the best way to learn? The best way to learn is to teach somebody else. Have you found that to be the case? You learn more than kids? Often, yes. Maybe most often. Well, that resonated very strongly with me. So the next day, there we are, I think it was the next day, working on the Armenian dances. There was a hard lick in there for the alto saxophones. I had two, playing the first part, a little boy and a little girl. The little girl was somewhere in the vicinity of it, and the little boy was not even close. So my natural impulse, just to do what I always would do, get off the podium, go work with these two kids while the rest of the band is sitting there zoning out, throwing spit wads, paper airplanes, or whatever, and learning nothing. And I thought about what I'd heard the night before. So I said, hey, two of you guys go off in the practice room and work on this, come back and play it for us when you get it ready. So I think it was maybe 10 minutes or so. They came back. They nailed it. I think what happened was the little girl was actually teaching a little boy, and she was learning in the process. I have used this a number of times. It works. So what remind me of these 100 snippets from master composers. I gave that to Bill Allred. He's the band director at Clovis High School, and he seemed pretty excited about it. He thought he could make good use of it, and I think he did find that to be the case. It was too late in the school year for him to do this. I suggested, hey, Bill, after you do this a few times, choose one of the kids. Say, okay, tomorrow, who wants to teach this tomorrow? And Johnny or Susie raise their hand. Okay, Johnny, you're going to do this tomorrow. And he gets up, or she gets up in front of the band, and she teaches it. Who do you think the kids are going to pay closer attention to? You or one of their own? Not much of a contest, is it? So yeah, I believe that with all my heart. The best way to learn is by teaching somebody else. And I have some great examples of that actually happening with real life players, student players, middle and high school players, on the keynote that we're not looking at. I'm sorry for that. Is it time for a break? I'm fine, but you want to?
Might be good.
Huh?
Might be good. I was coming in to see if y'all had a break.
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Can you just pause the live stream? Or like go back to the,
Yeah.
and mute it? Okay, so.
My grandfather came over to this country unable to speak a word of English. He had only learned 2 words, and he is now a millionaire. Well, what are the 2 words? Hands up. Okay, go process.
we are back. We were a little bit late getting back because we were telling some jokes. So again, come visit us here in real life and you'll get to be a part of all the fun. But Dr. Garner's going to keep going. This clinic should end around noon. A couple
Okay.
minutes before. So if I'm not in here, y'all might wait at him when it's time.
Okay. How many of you have your instruments? Okay, let's see. So, again, this is in my fantasy world with the Hutchinson Band. I did a thing called Chroma Craze. So here is something for B flat instrument. Anybody want to play?
Yeah, right here.
Okay. And do we have any flute players? Oboe player? Oh, sure.
There aren't a ton of copies, so if you need to move temporarily to be able to share, that would be great.
And bass clef. Any E flat players? Any saxophone players?
Oh, is everything 2 pages?
Yes.
Yeah, I got the second page. Who did you get the?
Any horn players?
Another bass player?
Pardon? No, just one bass player.
Kimber, you got the first page.
Did you have that horn part?
Oh, yeah.
We need the other page.
Good. Oboe. Tuba. Okay. So, back to my fantasy world. You know, I wanted to learn the chromatic scale, but I would like for it to be fun. So this is, let's see what part have I got here. This is an E flat part. Starts on with E flat. So I've got the first part, just playing 1 octave. Then, whoop. Then going up in half steps, and so 12 times, so we cover the whole range. And I thought, well, maybe it would be fun. It'd be nice if you guys could come forward a little bit, but and I thought, well, it'd be a little more fun maybe to have somebody else do it in inversion. So while some are going, another half are going, and I thought, well, heck, let's make a little trio out of it. So I added a third part. I have to think what part this is. This is a saxophone part. And then I added the fourth part. So we have a little quartet. Let's all play the top part. Just a 1 octave chromatic scale. Ready? 2, 3, 4. Good. Okay. Let's play the second line. Same thing, descending. Go. Let's play the third line. Ready? 2, 3. By the way, the only time I would ever dream of counting off is if I'm going to play. By the way, you've been taught there are 7 deadly sins. Actually, there are 8. The 8th sin is a 2-word sin. It's called counting off. Don't bother to look up, gang. I'll count off for you. You don't have to look. Good hell. Okay. Third part. Ready? Go. Fourth part. Ready? I'm not counting off. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay? 2, here we go. Not counting off. Think of the number of ways you could do this. You could say, okay, let's play this 4 times over. First time, play whatever parts you did. Second time, move down one. When you get to the bottom one, move up the top part. Okay? 4 times. Here we go. Ready? We're playing the same four bars. Okay, here's second time through, move down a part, second time through. Ready? Second time. Is this too hard?
We've got it over here. I don't know.
You know my help is for the moment. You guys move over here and be part of the club.
Just couldn't see.
Okay, this is the third time through. Ready? Third time through. Okay, sorry. Oh, I need to get in front of the camera, I guess. How's my hair? That's great. Okay. Third time through. Fourth time. So, you know, we might not do all of that every day, probably won't. But my Hutchinson kids love it, by the way, in my fantasy world. And they're really learning to do that. But here's another thing I did. I got it.
Oh my gosh. Hey.
Who's our best player here that can come up and do? I need a good, strong player. Who is that? Pardon?
Oh, do what?
He just volunteered.
Pardon?
Noah said me.
No, what? I was asking what it was that you wanted.
I'm a strong player.
A strong player?
He wants
I
to
can-
go front.
I'm not-
Let's go.
Okay, now, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Noah Farrell. I'm not related to Will Farrell, of course. But
Oh, but you don't own an art, do you?
no.
Okay. So did you hear about Noah the ark finally hit shore? And Noah said, okay, everybody off, go forth and multiply. All the animals get off, except the 2 snakes. Noah said, hey, snakes, get off, go forth and multiply. They said, we can't multiply, we're Anders. Kevin, would you mind explaining that?
An adder's a kind of snake.
Oh.
An adder.
Now, that's the usual response I get, though. Okay. You want to hear the second trumpet joke again? All right. So, Noah, now here's what we're going to do. Going to play the second part here.
Okay.
You see that okay?
Oh, yeah.
And Noah and I are going to play a little bit of a duet. Okay? 2, 3, 4. Ready? Okay.
Mhm.
I've started, don't I? And it goes on. Now, this all fits with chroma case. Now, here's what my Hudson's kids are doing in my fantasy world. Two of them, it might just be two of them, but it might change every 2 minutes. Let's get just a quartet now to play the chroma craze, and we're going to play this along with it. So who's it going to be?
I'll do one.
Okay, well, figure out who's going to play what part.
I'll do four.
I'll do 2.
Could you get physically closer together?
Quartet, get close.
Preferably close to us. I tell you what, let's get you on camera maybe. Come on up here.
Derek, can I help you?
Sure. You heard any good jokes lately, Noah?
Noah. No. I'm just
I said
kidding.
Noah.
I know. I'm
Oh.
just messing. I was saying
That was the joke.
Noah. Yeah, that was a joke. Yeah. I didn't emphasize it.
No.
That was kind of really bad. So.
Okay.
But I agree.
Good effort.
Yeah, I know. I make jokes and I try to like keep them as plain as possible.
Wonder what I did
They go
with
over
it.
a lot of my students' heads. So.
That's the second page here. I don't know if we'll get that far. Okay. We're woodwind players, so not too loud. Okay. And just stick with the line. You're going to play. Okay.
We're gonna keep going?
Yeah, we're all doing it together. Okay. Ready? 2, 3, 4. You can't hear us, can you?
Maybe we should stand over there.
Yeah, they can
Or
be
maybe we ought to
antigonal.
get 4 woodwind players. Is there 4 woodwind?
Which has 4 brass.
Well, I see we've got a couple of flute players, and we've got a clarinet player. Is there another woodwind player?
We need a flute and clarinet.
I'll go.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. It has nothing to do with you. It's just you're too darn loud.
You've been fired. Where am I playing?
Oh, look at you.
Which part am I?
I don't know. You guys decide that. We need 3 other woodwind players.
Clarinet here.
Do you know these 2 ladies here came from a whole other country? It starts with a C.
Cuba.
What do you talk Cambodia? Come on.
I don't feel worthy of being next to you, Dr. Garner.
They spent something in the vicinity of $800 to come to this thing. Can you believe that? That's amazing.
I'm glad to have. Sorry,
I'll do first.
Look off of the
Okay, third.
4.
Now, Horde can be a woodwind, I guess.
I fit in.
Always the pinch hitter.
Now, well, I can talk about that more later. Okay, Can you move down the table?
Let's see.
You know the old joke about how to make a,
Probably.
so does it make a trombone sound like a horn?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody knows that joke, heck.
Stick your hand in the bell and miss half the notes.
Crackle up, crackle.
Crackle.
I'll look into it.
And the horn is really a trombone that got caught in a revolving door. Told you I emphasize the bad jokes. Okay. Are we ready? Everybody know what part you're playing? Okay, 2, 3. Let's go a little faster. 2, 3. So, what I'm thinking is, you know, this can be passed around. You're going to do the duet here for 2 measures. You do it there, you do it there. And maybe you could even do it at a concert. Here's another way you could do it. You play 2 measures. No, play 4 measures. And then rest 4 measures. Okay? And then we'll play our 4 measures.
Okay.
Okay? Here you go. Ready? Go. Tell you what, let's do it this way. Play 2 measures, and then only play the next 2 measures. And then the next thing you're going to play will be the next. You'll skip those 2 measures,
Yep.
okay? Again.
So 2,
Okay,
skip
yeah.
2, go to the next one.
Yeah, ready? No, wait your turn. 2 measures. This is the second set. We're skipping measures 3 and 4 each time. So here's the second set. Ready? 2 measure turn. We should be here.
I thought we were here.
No, it's my fault. We skipped 2 measures.
Okay.
Okay? Here we are. Ready?
Okay.
You know where we are?
I think you're skipping 2 measures every time.
Actually,
Never
I
playing
do.
here.
Started.
Yeah, we just.
I do have another one that does this. This is all,
Skip 2.
I had not anticipated doing it quite this way. Well, anyway, well, here's what I imagine. Here's what we do it in my fantasy world. Who wants to do these 2 measures? Okay, somebody side by side. Great. So you do the next, you do the next, and we're going to do it on the concert. And it'd be great to have the last 2 chair players doing it. And you know, that gives them a pretty powerful incentive. I do have it written out to do precisely that way, but without the keynote, we can't do it. But I also did another one. Imagining we do it at a concert, and we got a teacher who's a really great jazz player, preferably maybe on trumpet, and the trumpet solo goes. And it goes all the way through that. Let's try a little bit of that. I'm not sure how far I can get, but here we go. Beginning. Ready? 2, 3, 4. Probably couldn't hear much of what I was doing. If you actually did it on flute, it would need to be with the microphone, of course. This would be for a teacher. So the whole idea, again, is we're practicing and learning a chromatic scale, man, and we're having fun doing it, and we have their attention. And we vary it in all sorts of ways. Thank you so very much. Now, if you walk out of this room today remembering only 3 words, here are the 3. Routine is deadly. Repeat after me. Routine is deadly. How does our typical band rehearsal go? Okay, everybody, let's do the Remington warm-up. Okay, F around the room. Okay, our little chorale, probably was known as the Patterson chorale. Pat Patterson, great arranger. There's a little arrangement of Bach chorale. Okay, so what are the kids? We do that every day. They are bored out of their skulls. I actually have proof of that, by the way. So you've lost the most valuable part of rehearsal. We don't do the same thing the same way every day. We mix it up, and we try to remove anonymity as much as possible. One on a part, here, there, whatever. And also try to get them to make musical judgments. Okay, Billy and Susie, play this note together. Johnny, was that in tune or not in tune? Not in tune, okay. Let's trade some short notes. Da, da, Bill. Who was sharper, Billy or Johnny? Everybody agree? No? Get the kids involved in making musical judgments. Now, about chorales. When I was back at Hutchinson, we had 2 chorale books. We had the Bach 16 chorales, you know that green book. We also had the 35 famous chorales. They're all good. But you know, I've looked at some of those chorales, and for the most part, the kids may have 7 or 8 different notes in their respective parts. How many notes are they going to play over the course of a band rehearsal or a contest? Oh, excuse me, I said a bad word, evaluation. Okay, back to my Dana Carvey mode here. So, yeah, they just play a few notes, and they're having to read music, they're having to worry about rhythm. So it occurred to me one time, what is the ideal chorale? Well, the ideal chorale would be one where they can hear every note before they play it. That's what the best musicians do. They hear every note before they played it. You know, and I was doing that thing. I knew what that was supposed to sound like. Because I ran around the block a few times with this thing. This is Betsy, by the way. You know, I guess this is what I'm supposed to be talking about tomorrow. I've had a few Betsy's, but so I want a chorale where they can hear every note before they can play it. I want one that will cover the entire range of the instrument, if it can. I would like one where they don't have to look at music, where they're able to devote their attention entirely. What are the chorales for? Well, they're for tone, and pitch, and balance. I want them to be able to devote their entire attention to that. So, in a rare moment of brilliance, which is probably overstating it in the extreme, of course, excuse me, the Dr. Pepper causing a little problem here. I thought, you know, what if we just played an 8-4-5 cadence? 4-5. What am I saying? 4-5-1 cadence, and we did it in 4 parts. So the top part could go 8-7-8. Second part 6-5-5. Third part 4-2-3, and the bottom part 4-5-1. And we've got a 4-part chorale. Okay, let's do a 4-part chorale, those if you have your instruments. You can do either 8-7-8. So we might play it. Let's suppose you're a bunch of middle school kids. You've never done this before. Okay, gang, and we'll do this. Let's play B-flat scale. You ready? We'll just go. Here we go. B-flat scale. How many notes did we just play?
We played 8.
Played 8 notes, okay. How about playing 8-7-8? That's the top note. We go down to the next note below and back to the top note again. 8-7-8. Great. Who can tell me what was the 6th note of the scale? Let's play up to note 6. Here we go. You know what the next note below it is, right? Let's play 6-5-5. There we go. Okay, can you figure out what the 4th note is? Let's play up to the 4th note. Can you go from that note to the 2nd note and then up to the 3rd note? Let's see if we can do that. Now start on that same note, but go up. Go 4, up a note to 5, and then back to the 1st note again. Let's do that. 4-5-1. Okay. Now, what I ordinarily do is say, okay, now let's hear the following people play 8-7-8. First flute, first oboe, first clarinet, first alto sax, first trumpet. They play 8-7-8. Great. Now, second flute, second oboe, second clarinet, second alto sax, second trumpet, and first half of the horn section for play 6-5-5, and so on. You know, finally all the bass instruments are playing 4-5-1. Somebody knows what they're going to do. Okay, pick out whatever you want to play. Here we go. 4-5, 8-7-8, 6-5-5. You're no longer middle school with kids now. You're highly skilled band directors. Okay, whichever you choose. 878? Okay, who played 655? Who played 423? And 451? Okay, well, that's a fairly even division. Let's do it again. Ready? Now, I extended that later then further. Whichever one you started on. Let's say you started on 878. So you're going to make a little tune. You're going to go 8, 7, 8, 6, 5, 5, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Let's all do that. 8, 7, 8, 6, 5, 5, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Go. Can you do the same thing but start with 655 and then end with 878? Go. Right, let's start with 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 8, 7, 8, 6, 5, 5. One more to go. Going to start on 4, 5, 1 rather. Okay, 4, 5, 1, 8, 7, 8. Go. You just have to look at any music. Now, start on whatever one you originally started on when we first played it, but follow it all the way through. Okay? Ready? Here we go. So you didn't have to look at a single note, did you? And you could hear every note before you played it, couldn't you? Your kids can do that too, by the way. Now, I even made up, being me, some words to go with it. I have it on the honor band's doing it on the keynote presentation. And the words are this: 3-note chorales will soon help me to play in tune. Let's all try that. Ready? 3-note chorales will soon help me to play in tune. Now let's start with 3-note chorales will soon. We're starting on 6/5. 5. 3-note chorales will soon help me to play in tune. Okay, start on 4, 2, 3. 3-note chorales will soon help me to play in tune. Okay. 3-note chorales will soon help me to play in tune. Okay, now, you know which one you're going to start on? So, let's hear just the first note. You can say la. The first note you're going to sing. It's going to be la or la or la. One of those three. La. Okay. 3-note chorales will soon way your middle school kids could do that, is there? Yes, there is. Of course there is. They won't do it as fast as you did it. But again, think of what's happened here. Nobody looked at any music. Everybody heard the note before you played it. Everybody was free to concentrate entirely on matters of tone production, good pitch, balance. Now that to me is, and by the way, then we can do that exact same thing, either up a half step or down a half step. That was the key of B flat, of course. We do it in B or we do it in A. And you know what? We have then covered all 12 notes of the chromatic scale. And we can do it in any register you designate. So now, instead of playing 6 or 7 different notes in our same stinking chorale that we do it every day after day after day, we can vary it like that and cover the entire compass of the instrument, having to look at no music, devoted ourselves entirely to the matters that we're intending to accomplish in our chorale playing. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You wrote out the deal here on the paper. Is there a reason? For us
Oh,
to
did I write it down here?
Well, somebody did. It says 3NC long version, and I'm assuming it's the same.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's the 3NC long word.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So is that for like just teacher reference, so we know what's going on, or is that like?
No, that's for the teacher. That's not for the kids.
Okay.
We don't want the kids looking at music. Now, I've done this with countless bands and a lot of young bands. Well, I've done all of that. But they can, and by the way, okay, so, hey, here's this piece we're working on today. It's now in the key of E flat. Let's play an E flat scale. Great. Okay, let's all play 6-5-5. Let's all, A7-8, 6-5-5, 4-2-4-5-1. And now, you know, we do the 3-note chorale in that key. Oh, we're in the key of A flat. Okay, let's play an A flat scale. And we do the 3-note chorale in that key. Can you see the possibilities here that are way beyond our same old day after day chorale? Oh, sorry there. Yes, sir, a man.
Jeez, I guess along those lines, just thinking about this, would you consider this to also be an opportunity where you could, like let's say you start concert B flat, okay, going up a half step? Like,
Sure.
And then also doing that along with the chromatic?
Oh, sure, absolutely, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm just wondering if it's too much. Well, it's never too much, I know. But, I mean, that's really my question is like, could you just say, okay, everybody go up a half step and then do your 8-7-8 and then, but also still call it the key, but kind of be teaching it. I don't know, it's kind of a backwards way of going at chromatic a little bit.
I don't see why not. Again, what are our magic 3 words?
Routine is deadly.
Routine is deadly. Okay. Remy tomorrow, F around the road. No. I won't pursue that further, except the routine part of it. I saw a clinic of a young woman, well, a woman did at TMEA several years ago. She had recently completed a dissertation someplace, and she did her dissertation on effective practice habits, and she did some very extensive research, and she drew a graph on the chart representing it. This had to do with individual practice. So here's an hour.
There's a marker.
Oh!
Or there's on the.
So there is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So here, this represents 1 hour. And she said, so here is where the attention is highest, about the first 10 minutes, and then it does this. And then about the last 7 or 8 minutes, it does that. Now that is apparently, allegedly, and I believe it, was a result of some very extensive research. And that's rang very true with me. As I said, this applied to individual practice, but I think it certainly applies to a band rehearsal, a rehearsal of any kind of an instrumental or any kind of a musical ensemble. So what are we doing up here? All right. We're squandering that most precious part of the rehearsal on routine. I actually did this with some kids a few years ago with a bit of hesitation. I was at their rehearsal for only 50 minutes. It's the rehearsal of the day. And the really good band director, but they did all that stuff. And I had this little conversation going. I had a devil on one shoulder, who I know well, and a little angel suddenly appeared. I hadn't seen much of him. And that devil was saying, "You need to do this." Angel said, "Don't do that. You're going to embarrass him. You're going to make him look bad in front of his student." And the devil said, "Do it." You can imagine who prevailed. So it was with no little hesitation that I did this. I got on the podium and I said, "Tell me something. If I were 12 or 13 years ago again, and I just spent the last 10 or 15 minutes the way you did, I think I would have been bored out of my skull." Did any of you feel that way? The hands didn't raise up. Every hand shot up. And the way I was able to justify doing that in my man, as I said, it was not without a good deal of hesitation. But I thought, he needs to know that. Routine is deadly. And those first 10, 15 minutes of rehearsal are precious. So maybe we're going to do scales or whatever, we're going to vary it in a number of different ways. And we're going to try to involve individual kids, remove that cloak of anonymity, where you're sitting back there in the middle of the third clarinet section and you think it doesn't matter what I do. You're not really involved. And you're going to try to remember Professor Akoff's words that the best way to learn is by teaching somebody else. Boy, I wish I really did have that Hutchinson band again. I'd love to do those 100 snippets and get the kids up there to do some of the teaching. I think everybody would benefit from that. Well, let's see now. Where are we here? We did the chroma craze stuff, or at least part of it.
Dr. Garner, you have about 20 minutes.
Oh, good heavens. Okay, well, let's talk about the tetrachords. And do I have tetrachords on here? Okay, this is one of the most significant moments of my life. I've had 8 flute lessons from real flute teachers in my life. The first one, actually I intended to tell this story tomorrow, but first one, I was the best player because I've spent by far the most time practicing. I don't know if the other kids ever opened their case after, other than in band rehearsal, but somehow I fell in love with this thing. I did spend a lot of time practicing. And practicing does work. It's true what they say. You get better if you practice. And so I was the best player because of that. That's not a boast. It's just a result of greater effort. But I'd never had a lesson from a real player. I'd never even heard a real flute player, ever. You couldn't go buy a real record of a flute player, and this was well before Google or YouTube, which brings up another matter. Why aren't you band directors telling your kids who the great players are that are available at the click of a mouse? They could go hear Barry Tuckwell or James Galway, whoever. Band directors don't do that. I, for a long time, was asking kids, who are your heroes on your instrument? Nobody knows. The only time I ever got an answer was at the High School for Performing Arts in Houston. Whoa! Did those kids know? They could name off 20 great players, all of them on their instruments. You need to be doing that. You need to tell them who the great players are. Just go to YouTube and type in Mozart Clarinet Concerto or whatever and listen to yourself and find the player that you like is the best. and tell them. Have those kids listen to that. I mean, they don't have to be doing TikTok or YouTube or Reddit or whatever they do all the time. They might be able to squeeze in a little time to listen to a great player. Well, I'd never heard a great flute player ever, live or recorded. But President Harry Truman at the time, daughter Margaret, was a would-be singer. And she was making a tour, recital tour of the United States. And people would go hear her try to sing because she was the president's daughter. She brought with her a pianist, of course, and a flutist who was the principal flute in what was then known as the Kansas City Philharmonic Orchestra to do some flute and soprano things. And they came to Amarillo. How my beloved band director, Mr. Rowe, met up with this flute player, I have no idea. But whoa, what a fortunate moment it was for me. But he brought him out to school, and I can still see in my mind's eye, as if it were yesterday, standing on a stage at Amarillo High School playing I don't know what for him. I didn't get very far into it until he said, his face screwed up in pain. He said, I had a pretty high opinion of my flute playing, just because I was better than the other kids. And that because I practiced the more. I want to emphasize that, not because I was such a great talent, not that at all. But his face screwed up in pain. He said, where did you get that vibrato? I never heard that word. I said, I don't know, sir. What is that? He said, it's that quiver in your sound. Where'd that come from? I don't know. He said, well, come to my hotel room at the Capitol Hotel, long gone in Amarillo. This afternoon, I'll show you the proper way to do it. What I had, and I can't reproduce it, was a real nanny goat vibrato. I heard a few of those yesterday in the flute tryouts. And so he said, it's supposed to sound like this. What? I was thunderstruck. Somehow I could do it immediately. I don't know how. He said, the flute, the vibrato comes from the diaphragm. This is wrong. Down here. So boy, I became a flag-waving, banner-carrying, devout acolyte for the diaphragm vibrato. First of all, the diaphragm is an involuntary, there's no such thing. The diaphragm is an involuntary muscle. Sits at the base of the lung, a dome-shaped muscle. You inhale, diaphragm flattens out, you exhale. The diaphragm does this from the first moment of life until the last. We can't make it do anything. What people who speak of the diaphragm vibrato really mean, it's the abdominal muscles. I said walk into any bar and start an argument about counting systems. You could do that about vibrato. The diaphragm vibrato, the throat vibrato. Well, I was, as I said, a devout believer in the diaphragm vibrato until years later I was teaching at Lubbock, and I read about this book called, let's don't go there, that's another story. Let's go back to, this guy's name was Lib Noland, the flutist from St. Louis. Kansas City. And then he showed me a scale exercise he did, where you go start on the first degree of the scale, you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I remember he did it in the key of F. Then you do it on the second degree of the scale. Third degree, finally up to the, that's terrible. First division. Okay, 2 minus. And so, with that in mind, I did this tetrachords in fifth study. So, the top part is going on, start on the key of B flat. Then going up a third and another third, and taking us up to the next scale in the circle of fourths. Oh, and then we do the, So we just go through the whole circle of fourths using Lib Noland's idea I told you about before. But then I've got somebody doing it in inversion. Then I thought, well, heck, let's do the arpeggio. And we got a little trio going. Let's see. I got a flute player here. Can you press one?
Yes.
Okay. I just play the arpeggio. C arpeggio. C E G E C E G E C E G. Okay. Do you want to play the top part?
Yeah.
Okay. We just look at what's out. Okay.
Yes.
Play it octave. Okay, I forgot which part I did. I got it okay. Let's do it twice as fast. So we go through the song before. Now, we've played all the scales because we played it. Play the tetrachord in key of B flat. Later on, we're going to do the tetrachord in key of F. So we've covered the whole B flat scale. We've covered all the scales. We get through it, and we've done it as a little trio. And you can do it all sorts of ways. Okay, let's hear all of the 7th graders play the bottom part. All 8th graders, or maybe boys and girls. I used to do this. Republicans and Democrats too. Republicans, I can't hear it. No, it's Democrats. How many ladies didn't want to say a word on behalf of Justin Trudeau? Can I tell the story?
Sure.
So when I found out in Canada yesterday, I said, so what do you, this is going out on the internet. I don't think I will tell you. So that's the tetrachords and fourths, and are we out of time?
Yeah, about 12 more minutes.
Oh, 12 more minutes. Well, I've lost my handout. What do I have next on there?
Intonation.
Okay. Well, first of all, kids need to really know what sound is. So I'll give you my standard version of this. Every now and then I get the right answer, not often. I would say, okay, who can tell me in one word what makes sound? Anybody?
Air.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Wind.
I can't believe Travis Barney had the right answer. Travis Barney? Come on. What'd you say, Travis?
Things that vibrate.
Yeah, something has to vibrate. You're hearing the vibration of my vocal cords as I speak. You just heard that thing vibrate for a moment. So I blow into the flute. The air is vibrating inside the flute. Now, okay, who could fill in the blank? The faster the vibration, the blank the sound. The higher. Sometimes they get that. So that must mean the slower the vibration, the
Lower.
Sure. So, you still got your clarinet?
Yep.
So, if Noah and I are play your concert B flat, the third space C, and if we're by his reed and my air string are vibrating exactly at the same speed, it'll sound pretty much like one tone. What if I vibrate slower than he does? How do you like that sound? Well, sure, flat is bad. But standard reed then, and sharp is good, right? Oh, maybe not. So I'm going to start low, and I'm going to gradually raise the pitch, and you tell me when the. And by the way, the greater the difference in vibration for every second, every vibration per second we're apart, you'll hear one little wave in a sound. For just one vibration apart, if he vibrated 500 times a second, I'm vibrating 449 times a second, you hear, or for two vibrations apart, you hear vibration twice that fast. The faster the vibration, the worse altitude it is. I'm going to start low, I'm going to gradually come up. See if you can tell when the vibrations disappear. Is that wonderful? That's what we call in tune. That's a good thing. They need to know what is in tune exactly. What causes pitch And what does it sound like when it's out of tune? A little bit, a lot. And then the bad news is this, and I tell them this, I've got some bad news for you. That instrument you're holding, it's built out of tune. It's made that way. The manufacturer can't do it otherwise. All sorts of compromises. But it's up to us as players to be able to recognize when something's out of tune and know how to, what we call lip up or lip down, or sometimes an adjustment is made in one way or another. It could be a difference if you're a woodwind player. Did you get this in a handout, the fingering stuff?
The flute stuff is tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Fingering flute stuff's tomorrow.
Okay, well, so, and sometimes maybe a different fingering. Noah, play the two top line F sharps for us with the fork fingering with the middle finger. No, the octave lower. F sharp. Middle finger. No, I want to hear F sharp and F sharp, two F sharps, different, the same F sharp but different finger. So, you hear the difference in the pitch?
If you're talking about this part, they do have that.
Pardon?
If you're talking about this,
Yeah, they have.
do have that.
Okay.
They just don't have that fingering.
Yeah, okay. So, a different fingering roll, but also a fingering adjustment. For example, pretty badly, most of the third octave notes on the flute tend to be out of tune. If I'm playing an octave A flat with him, he's playing his B flat at the top of the staff, and I'm playing the A flat up here with the regular fingering, I'm probably going to be sharp. So I can add a couple of fingers and lower it. Does that mean we can count on that being perfect? No. We can count on it being lower though. Actually, that's a pretty sharp B flat, I think. In this case, I don't have to add the finger. But high F, you can add this finger, make it lower. High E, extremely sharp. You can move the pinky. This applies to all woodwinds. All woodwinds have alternate fingers. Now the brass have two big problems. One is personality. No. I meant three big problems. No, one is the deficiency of the three valve series. To lower a note a half step, you've got to increase the wavelength by 6%. Close, around that, it's 5.8 or something, but about 6%. Okay, we can build a second valve that will lower it exactly 6%. We can build a first valve that will lower it exactly 12%. But then we put those two valves together, and it's not going to come close. It's going to be really sharp. And so what they do is they compromise. They'll build those individual slides longer than theoretically they need to be. And in the third valve, they build that way longer because you rarely use a third valve by itself. So the upshot is 1 and 2 is a sharp note on trumpet, on any three valve instrument. Trumpets, if it's a good trumpet, it'll have that gadget on the first valve slide that you can lower it with. And they all have a kick slide that they can lower. The 1 and 3 is really sharp. 1, 2, and 3 is miserably sharp. The error is huge there, but they've got that kick slide they can lower. But if they have first valve saddle, they can lower anything involving the first valve. So they do have that. The tubas, of course, and euphoniums, if it's a good instrument, will have a fourth valve, so they never have to do 1, 3. They can do 4 instead. They never have to do 1, 2, and 3. They can do, and they can play a fourth valve instead. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but it does mean it's going to be better. Then the other problem the brass instruments have is the harmonic series. The harmonic series and the tempered scale do not play well together at all. So let's take the trumpet, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the fundamental on the trumpet. That's the lowest possible note you can play on the trumpet. Okay? It just follows the harmonics here. Second partial, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. There, the 8 partials of the harmonic series with that C is the fundamental. But here's the problem. All the octaves of the fundamental are fine. All the C's are just fine. The third partial is a little sharp. G is not the only third partial. F sharp, F, E, E flat, D, D flat. Those are all third partials, right? But third partial is not a big problem. Fourth partial is good. We're not worried about vowel combination right now. Fifth partial is flat. And the worst one is D. Why? Because the first vowel slide is lower than it needs to be, the lower the pitch 6%. So you got that working against you. First fact, it's fifth partial. A lot of times you're better off, if you have to play it 1 and 3. It's probably going to be sharp, but then you can use either the first valve or the third valve triggers to lower it. Sixth partial, oh baby, that is so darn sharp. Sixth is really sharp. F is not as bad because it's second, but it's still bad. First a little better because it's first valve, but it's still sharp. Seventh partial is unusably flat, so we don't do that. So those are the 2 big problems that the brass players are facing as far as intonation is concerned. And I'll tell you, friends, you can hear some really good brass players, and you can pick out sometimes, with even professional level players, you can occasionally hear a flat fifth partial coming at you, or a sharp sixth partial. And for the trombone and euphonium, this is the fundamental for the trombone and euphonium. So this is the flat fifth partial, this is the sharp sixth partial, and an octave lower than that for tuba. We need to know that stuff, and we need to know how to deal with it. Are we out of time?
You have 2 minutes to wrap up.
2 minutes to wrap up. I didn't get close, did I? Okay, you're going to remember one thing. And it's the Eastman counting system. Thank you, Fred.
So we will plan to have Dr. Garner back next year. We will help him figure out his password by then. So he has the keynote.
It's going to take at least that long. I am so disappointed about that. It would have been, if it had any value at all, far more so if I'd had that. None of it got.
And we will have him continue where he left off. Luckily this week we get to see him 2 more times. Tomorrow morning he'll be doing a flute clinic, and Thursday morning he'll be talking about music education from the time he started in 6th grade, right? Seventh grade until now, and all the changes. I know some of you talked a little bit about it today, maybe?
No, I didn't, but Dana Carvey did.
So we'll see him again for that. Today, for online people, the next event is 4:30. It's going to be a great clinic on beginning to band, specifically focusing on teaching kids to listen from day one. And we will have the chat on, and we'll be able to interact a little bit better on that today. And then we'll see you tomorrow as normal schedule. We'll have an 11 o'clock, a 1:30, a 2:30, and a 4:30 for the next few days after that.
Well, now the flute clinic tomorrow is just going to be a section rehearsal with the symphonic band, I think, second band. So I'll try to, our main goal in here is to help them prepare the music. And I hope that we'll do some things that may be of something aid to you.
All right, thank you. You guys that are here, I know Level 1 talked about going to the barbecue place. You're welcome to go join them. It's a small place, so if y'all want to pick a different place, I told them you text out. And I know some of you are going to eat back at the dorm. And then we will be right back here. We'll try to start at about 1:30. So if you want to come early and help us set up, we need this to be a band, a reading band. So we'll start at 1:30. We're good.
Now I've
Did you
got.
shut that off yet?
Oh,